it sounds a little bit like there's this visceral reaction of, oh my God, this is going to take my job. But also maybe that's not a bad thing in some ways, right? Like automate a lot of the work that's boring, repetitive work, and then go focus on the things that's high value that AI is not going to be able to do well.
Hey everyone, Claire here, one of the producers of All Aboard. In today's episode, we're joined by Abraham Ingersoll, technologist, systems thinker, and now security lead at THG Ingenuity. Abraham has a unique vantage point, running security for a global enterprise from the UK and watching how AI adoption plays out across teams, countries, and cultural boundaries. He and Alex get into what it really looks like to deploy AI across an enterprise, what it means to govern identities in an age of autonomous agents, and how deeply human behavior, like fear, friction, and curiosity, shape the future of security. This one is full of grounded insights, some strong opinions, and a few hot takes. Let's get into it.
Abraham AI Ingersoll.
That's right.
The initials match up, but tell me a little bit about your role. What are you doing now?
Oh man, so a couple of years ago, it started 2023. I got the tap on the shoulder. Hey, we need somebody to deal with security. So I'm an American in the European theater. I've been here for 6 years, almost on the dot. And the company's THG Ingenuity, which no one knows about. We're fulfillment and e-commerce for a lot of international brands, a lot of name brand big companies with very particular security and data protection requirements. And my history of background is more on the systems and on the sales side. So I think we would have crossed paths during your days trying to acquire Scale FT. I was a customer facing, becoming VP of Solutions Engineering. So basically, I would pick up the phone at Gravitational Teleport. It's really well known these days, but back then we were small scrappers with Ev and Sasha and Taylor. So I've been over here started biz dev type stuff in the infrastructure space, and then transitioned to just a general agitator around technology. And eventually complained enough about the security team that it became my problem. Yeah.
So you inherited it. You got a battlefield promotion to run all things security. Well, I'm curious about that thing because you've seen enough between stateside and internationally on the security side to have an opinion there, I would imagine. But I've definitely noticed differences in attitudes around security in the US versus international. I'm kind of curious does anything strike you as like very different in the way companies in those different theaters kind of perceive security or behave towards security? Like obviously kind of infamously Europe's like really big on privacy, but does it extend beyond privacy? Is there anything else that's like notable there?
There's a huge set of cultural differences. I don't know if I'd even segment security out to be separate. So there's aspects that are really nice. Like I get 28 days of paid leave. Do I actually use those? Maybe not. If you want to go hunt down someone like an owner of an asset or something, roughly 1 out of 10 days, they're gone. They're not around. And they don't answer their phone. They're not like available on Slack or Teams or email, right? So there's subtle things like that. There is, at least in the UK, it's probably different in other parts of Europe, a very strong deference to authority. People generally do what they're told, and they will often only do what they're told to be done, which is troubling for an American entrepreneur who kind of just expects people to take an idea and drive towards that idea. So there's been violent learning of having to be more explicit around directives, decrees, whatever. Other attitudes, the data protection thing is a huge thing. That's a huge difference. Although with the CCPA and other aspects, like California suddenly has a criminal statute. You drop a cookie, you don't have permission. Yeah, somebody will sue you.
You can go to jail? I didn't even realize that. Is it that bad?
Yeah. I've seen a few lawsuits. So that's the most eye-opening part to me. So traditional background is I would work very closely with security teams. I would be the person that they would watch the most because I had the most access of anybody. Because of low-level systems engineering stuff. So I was always really good friends, and I always would like to spend time with them, but I never wanted to be a cop, right?
Yeah.
So the other part that's really jarring, if you're not intimately if you didn't grow up with it, is the whole ethos of GDPR, data protection, and now the EU AI Act is very much trying to put the horse back in the barn.
Yeah.
Where, like, sorry, it's not going back in the
Well,
barn.
I mean, that's a yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the California 10th Circuit case, Anthropic versus the authors of books, it's a really wonderful read. Same judge as Oracle versus Google. Okay. His middle name's Haskell. Like, you gotta listen to that guy. So you have a very pragmatic take in the States, or at least just like this no regulation regime happening, kind of regulation by void. Whereas in the EU, we have very purposeful and specific designation between like AI implementer, AI builder. Even the word, they escape me at the moment, but similar to GDPR, the idea of a data processor versus a data controller.
Yeah.
I live and breathe that now, which is weird.
Oh, that is really weird. I mean, it's so interesting because in the US, it just feels like AI is totally still Wild West. Like you can pick up any tools, you can build any AI company, you can use any models, you can sell AI products to anybody you want to. There's no sort of, it doesn't feel like there's a regulatory regime around it at all. And honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a really good thing. So it feels like AI is in its infancy. I mean, do you see that in the UK theater? Is that stifling just the adoption and the usage and how people are thinking about AI in their own product or in their own businesses?
A little bit. So the UK and Brexit, I was in Brussels the night, like the final night. There was this, like a candlelit group of people at the EU Parliament who were like crying that they were leaving the member states. Yeah. So the UK, we've had a decree from our new Labour governments to adopt AI, and they kind of backed off some of the more draconian or more bureaucratic aspects of it. But because we are, as an enterprise service provider, subject to the data protection regimes and controls of our data processors, because we're a data processor of our data controllers, they will be particularly prickly and want to know. So they want to see our AI policy. They want to see how we enforce that. They want to make sure nobody's training on their data, or just it's really rough for me to understand where they're coming from because I'm so steeped in it day in and day out. I think as an entity, THG Ingenuity, our technology division, we're pretty far ahead from the typical org.
Yeah. I mean, what it sounds like, though, you're impacted by the regulations more broadly in the EU around AI and AI security, whatever you want to call it, AI governance, let's call it. But it doesn't sound like it has as much of an impact as if you were just actually in one of those countries governed directly by the laws. But because you do business with those companies, they're asking you a lot about the regulations and you're having to think a lot about it, I guess.
It hasn't come up that much. Honestly, people are still more fixated on data protection as a generic concept, and things like sovereignty, who holds the encryption keys, things like that. And it's starting to come in, but it's not a huge concern. So I think there's a big delta of usage where the States are probably 6 months ahead, which in AI years
is like AI is like millennium. That's a huge difference. I mean, like, can you speak anecdotally to that, and just in terms of like your own teams and the folks that work at the company? Are they using AI on a daily basis, or is it still only the edge of the spear? Because, like, as an example, we're pushing everybody in the company to be using it constantly for everything. It's like if you're not using it, it's an issue. It's like a performance problem, right? Like, how are you using AI in your business? How are you using AI in your job? How are you using it to go faster? Don't ask for more headcount. Tell me how you can do something with AI and automate something. Like, that's the conversation that's happening internally for us. Which, are you guys there, or is it much more like in the dabble state?
It's in the exponential growth phase, particularly with technology. So I'd be hard pressed to find someone out of a set of somewhere between 500 and 1,000 technologists, individuals of that set who haven't at least tried it. What we find is that people have exposure to bad models or old models have been set back, as opposed to people we hand deliver the latest and the greatest with the best tooling. If you can get people to where they had like whatever gnarly prompts that works, they'll never go back. Whereas if they've just like dabbled in Copilot or they've used ChatGPT off the street, so 4.0, right? They're underwhelmed.
Yeah.
So like one of my pastime these days is to walk around the office and then just switch on whoever I can in any form that's available. So a little bit of Anthropic Enterprise, a little bit of OpenAI Enterprise, and then a little bit of Google AI Studio.
When you say switch them on, you're just like, hey, have you tried to do this with Anthropic? Or like you're just trying to get people to like adopt?
Oh, yeah. I find that if they had plans that weekend, like I try to be nice about it. It's like if they really dig in, right, they're going to sit there for 30 hours straight. So I think the daily driver for most of our crew would be a plugin within VS Code called Root Code.
Yep.
It's engine decline, open source. It's pretty interesting. Agentic loop, write your editor. 100% open source, so you can really reason about it. And then Claude Code with the release of Sonnet 4 and Opus 4 has just been going off like a rocket ship. And as a security professional, it's definitely looking at things like Claude Trace. Somebody made it so you could look in depth at all of the traffic, like a man in the middle between your Anthropic API endpoint and your NPM install. So seeing the construction of that and how Anthropic is trying to deal with the reality of prompt injection has been like, if I'm going to push someone to a system, that's my preferred versus all the other crazy ways. We have a lot of interesting folks running ahead with the agent-to-agent stuff. So not just MCPs, but collection of them who are able to call each other and then operate in parallel runtime.
Are they building things that are going into production, or are you still very much in like the playing with tools phase of the world?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay, because this is where I'm really curious. Like, it's just the ground truth for a lot of companies, and like where they're at is, I definitely hear everybody you talk to, they're using AI for code generation. Like, if you're not, how could you not be at this point? It feels like we're like mid-wave there of just like mass adoption. Like everyone's got to be doing it. It's a new part of the tool chain. Where it's a little bit fuzzier for me is really around the, let's call them like corporate agents or personal productivity agents, where people are building agents that perform jobs or individual tasks, either for the company broadly or on behalf of themselves to automate tasks. And it's a little bit fuzzier there. Like I feel like MCP as a standard is still very early. I think they just shipped like an authorization part of the protocol. So it feels like it, and really companies at scale haven't launched like remote MCP servers that you don't have to host yourself. So I think we're like not yet at the technology enablement curve with those technologies to be able to do a lot of really interesting stuff. But certainly more technical people are going to hack around that and figure out ways. So I'm kind of curious what it looks like for you guys.
I was just sitting down with accountants today, and they had made it to a certain level of utility with Microsoft AI Studio, which I guess out of the box is some version or variant of GPT 4.0.
Okay.
Whatever
makes sense.
In situ retrieval it could do. And I asked him about evals, right? Because that's my gauge for maturity. Have you gotten to where you can make a change and test the change within your workflow? And the people immediately understand what I'm asking and what I'm saying, but they hadn't, and they weren't even sure if Microsoft AI Studio even has that capability. So it's really, and this probably is a subtle difference between the median European and American. Here, the immediate feedback I get from like a significant portion of people is, oh my God, this can take my job. And this is when I go around. Yeah, like they recoil like, wow, this is way better than I thought it was. Because I'm handling Gemini 2.5 Pro, Claude Opus 4, or OpenAI O3 if I can, depending on their use case, where they're coming from. So like procurement professionals, which really pisses off vendors. We haven't renewed yet, have we? We're at the 2 year.
Wait. Let's get there.
Oh man, you're such a critical part of my stack at this point.
Yeah.
We have to talk about what it means to have fully wired up identity governance and automation on top of like
For sure.
legacy HRIS, because
Totally.
I have to swim upstream. I didn't realize I was going to be a salmon swimming upstream into
Consuming tough HR data as a key input to your stack. I know.
Yeah, because you suddenly catch all these things like, wait a second, that's this invariance should not exist. It shouldn't be a thing. And it's always humans. So HR professionals, that's fascinating, right? Because the general rule from the EU AI Act is you can't have a machine pass judgment on humans. There's this enshrined right to be able to demand that you're judged by another human. Yeah, there's a data access request, right? So you can go and say, hey, give me a copy of the data you have on me, or go and delete the data you have on me.
Interesting. So does that affect things like performance reviews? Can you use AI to generate performance reviews, even if it's like started with human text and you can't do any of that kind of stuff?
I am a member of the International Association of Privacy Professionals, but I would defer to folks who got a higher score on the test than I did. And there's a subspecialty in there, like International AI Governance Professional. But yeah, you're not any system that collects human data that has basically PII. A data subject has a right to request it. All HR data, including all messages about someone, including all email, Slack, Teams, what have you. It is a chore and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can probably use tools, AI or not, just machine processing in a lot of ways that kind of are right up against that line. But if someone really demands that they be treated or judged by other humans, that's what you're supposed to do. So is HR using it to write letters and do things? Are employees using it to be basically harass HR? Absolutely. Like that's a really awkward conversation when you have to tell someone like, yo, dude, there's a lot of emojis and whenever you've sent to my HR business partner, and like, that's just not nice. Like, why?
Yeah.
Would you do that to your spouse? Maybe you shouldn't do that to HR. And the excuses or the responses you get from folks are really interesting. As far as like, oh, I didn't realize I couldn't subject other humans to AI output without telling them it's AI output.
Well, interesting.
You couldn't get away with it if you hand edited it, if you crafted unique tone of voice.
They just need a better prompt in there. Use less emojis, keep it pithy.
There's really good ways to tune tone of voice. Yeah.
There's very good ways to tune tone of voice.
That's one of the use cases we have. So a lot of our e-commerce sites, there's a lot of product detail pages or content, and that's also kind of like, how do you measure the amount of traffic that shifted from search engine optimization or Google organic to coming straight from ChatGPT, right?
Right.
Like there's a huge shift that's just happening.
There's a huge shift happening right now. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole host of these tools that are like generative. I mean, they call it GEO, I think, or I don't know what the new term is instead of SEO, but it's like it's basically optimizing your search and discovery for generative output tools. Because everyone's using Perplexity and things like that to do web searches now effectively.
So with the most of when we onboard folks to non-technical folks, the key things are to get them to use the biggest and the most expensive model out of the gates, meet them wherever they're currently at, try to get them to have success with the biggest, nicest model that's closest to their existing context so that they can get the appropriate context. So the prompt by itself will get you so far, but you really need to be able to, like, simple things, multimodal, people not understanding. So just, hey, take a screenshot, shove that in and talk to it. Right. Yeah. Things around transcription and compression of content, great. And then the other one I really like to do is when they ask me questions about it, like, hey, could it do this? Could it do that? The learning use case, right, is you can get lost for hours. And so I just raise my hands and say, try it, ask it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. How do you encourage your teams to use AI to automate it? Because it sounds a little bit like there's this visceral reaction of, oh my God, this is going to take my job. but also maybe that's not a bad thing in some ways, right? Like automate a lot of the work that's boring, repetitive work, and then go focus on the things that's high value that really requires more sort of like, cognitive, just more thoughtfulness or more kind of creativity or something like that AI is not going to be able to do well. How do you encourage the teams to do that, to spend the time doing that?
So the emergent behavior is like if we look at our secure internet gateway and the usage patterns, there's a subset that is within the four walls of our enterprise agreements. And then there's the off balance sheet or off the reservation usage. And usually people just don't know that there's ways to access it that are safer, or they're like they have a personal device, their burner laptop next to their real kit. Oh yeah. They see me come and they think I'm going to bust them.
They're like, oh, just slap the laptop.
Like, hide it. I'm like, no. I'm more curious. Like, I see what you're doing. If we really had to track you or record your activity, we would have it. But I'm more concerned that you are using the most effective model in the most effective way. I'm not here to bust you. I'm here to like get you into a copacetic or a reasonably clean way of using these things. And I think that people are really relieved, but then they still have this little bit of a bent of, I want to like reclaim the time for myself. I don't want to be more efficient for the company.
Right? Yeah, sure. Like I want to make my job easier, but I don't want to necessarily like redeploy that time and work 12 hours a day still just doing other stuff necessarily.
Yeah. So you're people who are more like the factory workers or the roles that are more knowledge work, but well codified versus totally creative. Those are the ones where what I did, I took the audit log from Claude Enterprise, then used Claude Code to say, okay, do a GNU plot, a scatter plot, days from when they got access, then showing like a heat map of usage over time. And you can really see in that there's some that like immediately up and to the right, ducks to water. And there's quite a few who are just like, even though you've done the initial, you've had them hit this point of like some kind of revelation, they still like, not for me. The lawyers,
oh, that's so interesting.
They're the ones who are like, they give me the stiff arm. They're still giving me the stiff arm. Where the doctor, we have an on-site medical practice. They were amazed. They didn't know they could have it. We got them the dedicated, I think it's called Haley. That just effusive, like, oh my God, this is going to change our lives. Some of the accountants, particularly interesting, ones who are fresh out of school, graduates, like they come in claiming they don't use it. And they're like, oh yeah, I use Claude all through senior year.
Well, I mean, so this is interesting. I wonder how much of this is going to be just like a lot of it's so behavioral, right? Like I look at my kids and their use of ChatGPT for just every day for calculus, like how do I solve this kind of a problem in calculus? How do I factor this equation? So like they're using it for everything, right? To get almost like just, it's so ingrained in the way that they do work and think about doing their work now. It's going to be like not even a second thought. And I just wonder how much of this is like built in sort of ingrained behavior. If you look at lawyers, like they're trained for 3 years, living and dying, like in the documents, reading books, like, oh no, this is the way you do law. You don't use ChatGPT to do this. I don't know. I guess I'm curious.
They've caught it making mistakes, right? And those mistakes really matter in the legal context. In our case, when OpenAI most recent model, maybe it was 03, their like published page when they announced it, one of the use cases was a legal platform. I forget which one. In our case, we use Thomson Reuters. So they acquired a YC startup that was early doors. It's the product called CoCounsel. So that's what I'm trying to get these. It's 10 times more expensive than a Claude Enterprise. But it's probably worth it.
Does it do a 10 times better job?
Wow. One of the most interesting, we've opened an office in India, like our own entity, our own people. And part of spending time there, in the range of like probably 4 months ago at this point. We got a local startup that had a LLM gateway with your typical controls, so PII, high entropy, so it could rewrite, it could reject, etc. And we had the founders of that company come and visit our local office. We've got 40 developers in a room. Made sure they all were online. This is with through code. The name of the company's Unbound Gateway. They're, I think, YC 24, 25, some of the fairly recent product manager from Palo Alto who started it along with other co-founders. And that having like them in the room, like just onboard folks, and then the culture there, well, they'll try anything, I guess, like fearless and relatively high agency, a little bit British in that they'll follow directions or stay within the parameters of whatever directions you give them. The fascinating thing with them, in a lot of these agentic tools, like you can live dangerously or something, command line parameter or Claude code, basically auto accept everything. So yeah,
it's like a bug bazooka.
Yeah, it will read any file, write any file, call any tool, go buck wild, right? Like until it's initiated. So one of the more peculiar predicaments with the new team, that was the first trip, got them all onboarded. A later trip came back and then just opened my diary calendar for them to book sessions, and watching some of them, just being a connoisseur of the human condition, they had checked all the boxes to enable automatic everything.
Yeah.
So it's this weird, like if you have a Tesla, would you let it do full self-driving?
Right. It'd be hard for me to, but my kids are going to grow up in a world where like it's totally unusual to drive probably. Like I don't want to drive.
So one of these, it's a real interesting cultural difference where in the UK office, it's much more exceptional where I look over some of the shoulders and see that they've just said, yes, let it do it, let it rip.
Interesting.
We internally consider it to be, because quite often these things, well, I would say generation prior, they get stuck in loops. Sonnet 3.7, or even Gemini a little bit, particularly edit diffs that were not like following your format. Or when you have a DLP gateway, basically change the prompt on the fly, confuse the crap out of the agent.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
One of these annoying things where it's probably better if the DLP thing just gives it a 14.9 or some sort of hard error. Change it. Yeah. One of the other interesting things from the Unbound guys, they at their level, seeing across a swath of different customers, high entropy inputs are extremely common. Because a lot of folks. What
do you mean by that? What do you mean by high entropy inputs?
Like your .env file with all your secrets. So if you have, the enterprise relationship through GCP Vertex, through Azure, through OpenAI, Amazon Bedrock, it's not that concerning, right? In the sense of you going into massive apparatus and almost certainly, especially the way Google phrases it's one way. They never train up data. But yeah, it's people are just not cognizant of especially when you have the agentic tool chains, how aggressive it'll be with just finding what it needs to find. Other really
it's so interesting though, because I think this is a place where it feels like we're repeating the mistakes of the past a little bit here. Like I remember when, I don't know, 15 years ago, when everyone realized, putting like AWS access keys in GitHub repositories is like a bad idea. It turns out there's like a history there and you can look them up and you can see these things. And it feels a little bit like we're kind of in that same mistake mode of, hey, I ship a bunch of access, like I built this like agent and I've hard coded my access key or like an API key or token or something like into my command prompt. Like it just feels bad right now. Like we're running out and we're adopting a lot of these tools and we're figuring out kind of what works, but it seems like the security is like very much an afterthought. We just don't have a lot of the tools or the patterns to be able to manage that securely. And I do just wonder if some of that's going to come back to bite us. Like I had no idea, for example, that ChatGPT and OpenAI has like a long lived history. You can get on there and ask it like, hey, just, describe me in like a paragraph form, like who am I? And it'll spit it out like pretty accurately. And I'm
So
like, oh, okay. Like, there's like a whole history here. Like it's tracking like the whole thing, all my prompts, and it's like summarizing them. So every time, someone's sending like an API key, it does make you wonder, is this like a little bit of a, like, are we just waiting for like the fallout of this?
So the recent CVE where Microsoft Copilot had a prompt injection attack that could exfiltrate all of your stuff by embedding a URL in Markdown and confusing contexts by defeating the input filters with just lots of input. That we're going to see some really horrific, like very successful attacks. Yes. And the supply chain side of it is probably the most interesting. So, on the memory thing in ChatGPT, before I forget, so we have internal podcasts where we bring people on, they talk about their success, and we can go the full gamut, not just more really senior engineers who are deep into ADK, starter kit, we operations and others, like, so people have vibe coded solutions that vendors are really upset about. They don't believe us. Like, here's your quote.
So you're actually you're vibe coding. Okay, we got to, by the end of this, we got to get on. I'm gonna see you vibe code Conductor One.
So when we have the guests, one of the typical segments we do is we have them load their ChatGPT and then ask it to roast them.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's so good. Like, as long as you haven't disabled or manually curated its memory feature, it's there. Yeah.
And it's probably pretty good at it too.
It's horrifically good. And then you can ask it, like, no, make it burn. that was so on the supply chain. If you think about like the ways that people get access to these models is usually like brew, install this, drop in this API key here, npm install that, right? So all of your attack surface for all that stuff is now not far away from somebody creative saying, ooh, I know that this particular library, the MCP playwright, is going to be calling and asking for the most recent documentation. All I got to do is prompt inject there, call another tool. Boom.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's where things like just-in-time access, things like no birthright access. We had this horrific set of events here where a set of threat actors named Scattered Spider, or just a different consultants called it different things, but a very antisocial group of people who are really mean about the impact. They're not just like ransomware gang. They're like, oh, we're going to cause chaos. So the grocery stores here were empty with the shelves bare. So they attacked M&S and Co-op, and then even Harrods, the famous toy store in London.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
The entry point, I guess, in the news, the supposed, was third-party IT contractors who would have been asked to do things like run their Active Directory and things like that. And that was really annoying in the sense of the top-level queries we would get. Like, how are you not going to be like them? And I can't explain, because I got Conductor One.
You're like, I got Conductor One. We get just-in-time access. We only give people the permission. I mean, I think this does, not to self-servingly tie it back to the things that we're working on, but I 100% agree with you about like no birthright access. Everything's just in time. It's dynamic access control. Those are the things that you actually really need when you think about enabling agents for authorization. How do you secure those long-term? Because agents are going to need their own permissions. These agents are going to work on behalf of people. They're going to need to do specific tasks. And how do you right size those permissions? How do you grant permissions just in time when people need them? I think it's like, and all that's going to have to be way more real time and way more context driven, because you can't have an IT help desk in the loop, like approving permissions and provisioning it out. If you've got 100 agents working on behalf of a single human being, like it just won't fundamentally scale. It'll break so bad.
Do you want a hot take?
Yeah, go.
We operate on all three clouds, as is everybody these days. And we're a Microsoft 365 shop, which is way more common. It's about 80-90% of large businesses in the UK are Microsoft, as opposed to Startup World West Coast, probably 89% are Google. So one of the painful realities of, like, Google has all this great stuff, particularly with TPUs and DeepMind and all that investments. But Google themselves do not have concept of identity, right? They have old G Suite accounts, Google Workspace. And if you're a Google engineer, you get a full fat Google identity with your own sandbox Google Cloud accounts. So if you want to do IDC, there's this thing called Workforce Identity Federation, where you have to define it at that level. And then you show up as this weird like identity assertion, not as like your email address. Yeah. So they don't
understand. You're like an ACL. You're like a defined identity. Like, not an ACL, but you're like a declarative identity or something. You're not even like a...
Yeah. And the only way to fix this would be to, like, for the median Google Cloud engineer or engineer within Google has to deal with these things, force them to use IDC. One of the more advanced things we're up to is trying to use A2A and ADK.
Yeah.
And that question of what identity does the agent take on? So say you have a collection that are basically just prompts wrapped around MCPs. Where is that boundary? Like, should that individual agent, you can consider them a human and have the human boundary? But even the plumbing of how do you get those claims or those assertions all the way to that agent, and then that agent operating on data, that's not solved at all. And it's dicey because it's the layering of all these concepts that a lot of folks just haven't had to learn, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I know. Amazon, like, they're way better, and then they have ages of having to deal with corporate identity systems. So like this, the identity manager, when you have AWS organizations, is clean and nice and just connects things. And IAM assume role is no big deal. I don't even know Azure AD. I avoid it like the plague.
Yeah. I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see how each of the hyperscalers, how their identity model breaks or works well in this new world. And I haven't put as much thought into it as I probably should have, but yeah, it's like you look at everyone's got their own sort of, again, Azure I'm actually less familiar with as well, but I would say both Google with Google Cloud and AWS have like pretty robust IAM policy control layers. Like, obviously they have to because they've got it's infrastructure that they're managing, but it's going to be interesting to see, I think the patterns of how you do identity around agents is going to be a little bit different. And so because it's going to be some hybrid between like a machine identity and a human identity. It's going to there's going to be parts of it that look and feel like both of those things, I would argue. And so it'll be interesting to see what breaks.
Workload identity. Oh yeah. It's
because know what I mean? Because it's like, it's kind of a machine, like it's kind of a little bit of like a persistent device identity, but it is also operating in many contexts like a human, like an identity. It might do an access request. It's going to have permissions assigned to it. Like you might, offboard it in a similar, it's going to have a lot of those types of patterns.
Oh man. We're in one of these procurement conversations where a tool that was human identity is being used for machine identity, which is more than 10x. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Which was not in the budget.
You're like, oh, whoops.
Yeah, the accountants don't care about that one.
You got to get that 90% discount then.
Yeah, they're instant responses. Get rid of it. And like, okay.
That's awesome. Well, it's good seeing you, man. I feel like we could talk for days about all things AI. We might have to do like a V2 of this. I actually do want to see you vibe code Conductor One live.
Oh man, yo, dude, I wouldn't even. Maybe like an MCP against it.
There you go. Yeah,
access straight from Cloud Enterprise.
Yeah, that actually would be really awesome. I mean, we have a remote MCP server, so yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Oh, you got to get in the Anthropic directory.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, all right, perfect.
Yeah, I normally we have like the AI free zone. Like, people stop me. Like, no, shut up.
Well, it was awesome chatting with you, man. Thanks for talking all things AI. Appreciate it, and it's good having you on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode of All Aboard is brought to you by the team at Conductor One. We'd love to hear your feedback. Send us a message at allaboard@conductor1.com. Till next time.